120 million records.
Yeah.
It's a number that's almost hard to comprehend. When you look at the list of the best-selling musical acts in history, you'll find Fleetwood Mac right up there near the top.
Mm-hmm.
But, when you actually start to peel back the layers of this particular band, that number, as huge as it is, it almost feels like a side note compared to the sheer unbelievable story of how they even got there.
It really does. I mean, we're not just looking at a pop band. It's more like a surviving organism.
That's a good way to put it.
You look at a band like the Rolling Stones or U2, and you see this consistent core of people, growing old together. Fleetwood Mac is the complete opposite of that. When you dig into the historical records, the biographies, you realize it's this incredibly complex saga.
A saga, right.
It's a band that has existed in these radically different forms starting in 1967 and going all the way through to, today, January 19, 2026.
And I think for most people listening, when they hear that name, Fleetwood Mac, they probably have a very specific image in their heads.
Sure.
They're thinking late 70s, California Sunshine, those huge soft rock hits like Dreams or Go Your Own Way.
The Rumours era.
Exactly. But our mission today is to build a really comprehensive biography that goes so much further than just that one period. We want to cover the entire timeline to really understand how this entity survived everything.
And it was everything. I mean, the 60s blues boom, the psychedelic era, the 80s, the industry shifts.
Yeah.
It's just one thing after another.
And the sources for this are pretty dense, right?
Oh, they are. We're drawing from historical records, session notes, all kinds of biographical accounts that detail everything, from the band's formation in, the pretty grimy London blues scene, all the way to what we can only call its final dissolution after the recent tragedies.
We have to talk about the soap opera stuff because that's what everyone knows, but there's also these really strange facts that I think the average listener just would have no idea about.
The cults, the fake bands, the lawsuits.
Right. It's almost unbelievable. So if you had to boil this entire just chaotic timeline down to a single theme, what's the thread that runs through it all?
Survival. It has to be survival. That's the hook. This thing, this band, it survived its founder just walking away. It survived the complete mental collapse of its key members. It survived becoming the biggest pop act in the world, and then it survived each other, which might be the most remarkable part.
It's so ironic given the name itself. Fleetwood Mac sounds so permanent like a rock, but the origin of that name it's very specific, and it tells you a lot about how things started.
It really does.
Yeah.
So the band was formed and named by the guitarist Peter Green. And you have to understand, Peter Green was a star. He was the guy who replaced Eric Clapton and John Mayall, the Blues Breakers.
Which was the gig in Britain at the time.
It was the absolute pinnacle for a blues guitarist.
Yeah.
So when he decides to form his own group, he names it after his preferred rhythm section. The drummer, Mick Fleetwood, and the bassist, John McVie.
So he named the band after the rhythm section, not himself.
Exactly. And the historical notes, they all suggest he did this for a very specific reason, to entice John McVie to join.
Why did he need enticing?
McVie was, let's say, risk-averse. He had a steady, paying job with John Mayall, and he was very reluctant to leave for an unknown startup band. Green figured if you put McVie's name right there in the title of the band, it would be enough of an ego stroke to get him to make the jump.
That is a fascinating psychological tactic.
And it worked. But it's also this strange trap he set for himself, because it meant that the band, Fleetwood Mac, could technically exist without him, Peter Green.
And in a huge twist of fate.
In the biggest twist, Mick Fleetwood and John McVie became the only two constant members through the band's entire decades-long history. Everyone else, including the founder who named it for them, just revolved around that core.
So let's go back to that beginning. London, July 1967. This is not the polished pop machine people know. This is gritty.
Oh, yeah. This was strictly British blues. The original lineup was Peter Green on guitar and vocals, Mick Fleetwood on drums, Jeremy Spencer on slide guitar, and then eventually John McVie on bass once he was finally convinced to join.
And their sound was pretty heavy.
Very heavy for the time. I mean, they had a UK #1 hit in 1968 with an instrumental track called Albatross.
Albatross is such a strange song when you think about their later work. It's slow, it's atmospheric, no vocals at all.
It was a total outlier, but it showed their range. They also had hits like Black Magic Woman,
which everyone thinks is a Santana song.
Yeah, everyone does. And Santana's version is incredible. But it was a Fleetwood Mac song first, written by Peter Green. But the dynamic of the band, it changed in a big way when they added a third guitarist, an 18-year-old kid named Danny Kirwan.
A 3-guitar attack, that seems intense for a blues band. How did they make that work without just sounding like noise?
It was all about texture.
Mm.
So you had Peter Green's very soulful, emotional lead tone. Then you had Jeremy Spencer, who was a purist, a disciple of Elmore James, playing that really dirty slide guitar.
Okay.
And then Kirwan comes in with this really unique vibrato and a melodic sense that was completely different from the other two.
Yeah.
In fact, Peter Green credited the success of Albatross largely to Danny Kirwan's influence.
So this new lineup let them move beyond just straight blues.
Exactly. It let them move toward a more rock-oriented sound. You hear it on albums like Then Play On from 1969. They were becoming something much more complex.
But just as they're finding this incredible new sound, the first major tragedy strikes the band. And this brings us to what's known as the Munich incident.
This is the moment, the pivotal moment for the entire first era of the band. It's late 1969. They're on tour in Germany. Peter Green gets invited to a party at a place called the Haifisch Commune. Right. And the narrative detailed in our sources, especially from their manager at the time, a guy named Clifford Davis. He cites this specific night as the tipping point for Peter Green's mental decline.
What happened at the party? What specifically changed him so drastically?
Well, according to the accounts, he took some impure LSD. Now, LSD was, everywhere in the music scene in the 60s, but this experience was different. It fundamentally changed his personality.
How so?
He became incredibly distraught about the band's money, their success. He didn't just dislike it. He saw their wealth as something morally corrupt. He started insisting that they give all their earnings away to charity.
That's a huge swing. From a successful rock star to wanting to be a complete ascetic.
He was tormented by it. He wrote a song during this time called The Green Manalishi, with the two-pronged crown.
Yeah.
And if you look at the lyrics, it's explicitly about a demonic dog that represents money and greed.
He's fighting a battle in his own mind.
A huge one. And this internal turmoil, it just grew and grew until he finally quit the band in May of 1970. The founder, the visionary, the front man, he just walked away.
So by 1970, the band has lost its leader. And this kicks off a period that so many documentaries just gloss over. But it's arguably the most chaotic and fascinating part of their entire history. The wilderness years.
It's the era everyone skips, but you're right. It's where that survival instinct was fudged. Because now you have the core rhythm section, Fleetwood and McVie, just trying to keep this whole thing alive while their frontmen keep disappearing in progressively bizarre ways.
Let's talk about the exit of Jeremy Spencer. Because this story, it always sounds like an urban legend, but the records are clear that it's fact.
It is 100% factual. It's February 1971. The band is on tour in Los Angeles. Jeremy Spencer, who's a key member, he leaves the band's hotel on Hollywood Boulevard.
And what does he say?
He tells everyone he's just popping out to get a magazine.
To get a magazine. And he just never comes back.
He vanishes. For days, the band is frantic. They're searching. They think he's been kidnapped. They think something terrible has happened. Eventually, they discover he'd been approached on the street by a religious group called the Children of God.
Oh, a cult.
A commune, a religious group, and he had joined them, just like that. Quit the music industry on the spot to join this group.
So you lose Peter Green to this LSD-fueled mental health crisis, and then you lose Jeremy Spencer to a religious group. That leaves Danny Kirwan as the last guitarist standing.
Yes, and unfortunately, Kirwan was also really struggling. The pressure of being the sole frontman, the main songwriter, it weighed on him. He developed a severe alcohol dependency, and all that tension just exploded in 1972. Right before a concert, Kirwan gets into this furious argument with the rest of the band. He smashes his guitar, his Gibson Les Paul, refuses to go on stage. Wow. And then sits out at the soundboard and watches the rest of the band try to stumble through a set without him. And after, he criticizes their performance.
He was fired, I assume.
He was fired right after, yeah.
It's like the lead guitarist spot in Fleetwood Mac was just cursed in the early 70s.
Absolutely cursed. But amidst all these guys leaving, a very significant person joined in 1970. Someone who would completely shape their future.
Christine McVie.
Christine McVie officially joins the band. She'd been a fan for years, back from her days in a band called Chicken Shack. And of course, she was married to the bassist, John McVie.
And she was already a big deal in her own right.
A huge deal. She had been voted Female Artist of the Year by Melody Maker magazine. She brought this incredible stability and a melodic pop sensibility that the heavy blues lineup just didn't have. Her joining was really the first step toward the sound that would make them global superstars.
We also have to mention Bob Welch here, Because he's so often the forgotten man of Fleetwood Mac. He wasn't in the original lineup, and he wasn't in the Rumours lineup.
Bob Welch is absolutely essential to the story. He was an American guitarist who joined after Jeremy Spencer disappeared. He's the one who really helped them transition their sound from that heavy British blues to a more melodic, California-friendly rock.
He was the bridge.
He was the bridge. Albums like Future Games and Mystery to me. Without Bob Welch, the band would have collapsed in the early 70s, period. But this is also where the internal drama that Fleetwood Mac is so famous for, it really started to brew.
What kind of drama are we talking about here? This is pre-Lindsey and Stevie.
This is the template for what was to come. It was interpersonal. It was marital. John McVie's drinking was putting a massive strain on his marriage to Christine. At the same time, Mick Fleetwood's marriage to his wife, Jenny Boyd, was falling apart.
And this is where it gets messy.
It does. Jenny began an affair with the band's other guitarist at the time, a guy named Bob Weston.
Wait, another guitarist? How many did they have?
Well, Bob Weston had joined alongside Welch to sort of bolster the lineup.
Yeah.
But when Mick Fleetwood found out about the affair in 1973, in the middle of an American tour,
oh no,
he fired Weston on the spot immediately. The problem was you can't just fire your lead guitarist mid-tour. The rest of the dates had to be canceled.
And this cancellation, this is what leads to one of the most bizarre, frankly audacious chapters in rock history, the fake Fleetwood Mac. I need you to explain this because it's just hard to believe it actually happened.
It sounds like a conspiracy theory, doesn't it? But it was a very real crisis. So in 1973, after the tour collapses, the band's manager, Clifford Davis, is furious. He's got all these venues booked, all these commitments, and no band to play them.
The actual band have just gone home.
Right. They retreated to lick their wounds. So Davis comes up with this argument. He claims that he owns the name Fleetwood Mac, not the musicians.
Wow.
He argued it was a brand that he managed, and the players were just interchangeable employees.
So he just decided to hire new employees.
He hired a completely different band. He found the members of a group called Legs, and he sent them out on the road to play the rest of the tour dates, billed as the new Fleetwood Mac.
Just imagine that. You buy a ticket to see Fleetwood Mac, you walk into the arena, the lights go down, and 5 complete strangers walk onto the stage. No Mick Fleetwood, no John McVie.
That's exactly what happened. And you can imagine how the audiences reacted.
Poorly, I'm guessing.
Very poorly. Once people realized it wasn't the real band, things got hostile. There are reports of bottles being thrown at the stage. Promoters were furious. The tour collapsed almost immediately, but the damage was done.
So the real band had to fight to get their own name back.
They had to sue. This long, drawn-out legal battle is what finally forced them to fire their management and decide to manage themselves. And crucially, it's what compelled them to relocate permanently to California to handle all their business and legal affairs.
So, in a way, the disaster with the fake band is what actually pushed them to America.
Precisely. Without that disaster, they might have stayed in the UK. That lawsuit hit a giant reset button that landed them in Los Angeles right at the exact moment they needed to be there.
Which brings us to late 1974. They're in LA, they're managing themselves. And Bob Welch, who has been through all of this chaos, decides he's had enough.
He is exhausted by the drama, the touring, and he leaves the band. So once again, they're without a guitarist and a male lead vocalist.
And this is where Mick Fleetwood goes looking for a studio.
Right. He's scouting studios for their next album. He's at Sound City in Los Angeles. And the engineer there, Keith Olsen, wants to show off the studio's sound, specifically the drum sound. So he plays Mick a track.
A track called Frozen Love.
Frozen Love by a duo called Buckingham Nicks. And Mick Fleetwood was he was blown away by the guitar work. It was this intricate finger-picking style, aggressive but also incredibly melodic. He asks who the guitarist is.
And he's introduced to Lindsey Buckingham.
Who just happened to be in the studio that day recording demos.
So Fleetwood just offers him the job on the spot.
He did. He invited him to join Fleetwood Mac right then and there. But Lindsey Buckingham, he had one condition.
A pretty big condition.
A huge one. He said that he and his girlfriend, Stevie Nicks, were a package deal. He told Fleetwood, essentially, if I join, she has to join too.
Which is amazing, because Fleetwood Mac already had a prominent female vocalist and keyboard player in Christine McVie. They weren't looking for another one.
Not at all. But Fleetwood agreed. He agreed to take 2 people when he was only looking for 1. And that single decision, it changed the entire trajectory of popular music.
The chemistry must have shifted overnight.
Completely. You now had 2 couples in the band, the McVies and Buckingham and Nicks plus Mick Fleetwood. And the sound immediately became this polished, harmony-drenched pop rock. Their very first album together, the self-titled Fleetwood Mac in 1975, it went straight to #1 in the U.S.
With songs like Rhiannon and Landslide.
Instant classics. It was a massive, massive success.
But as their professional success just skyrocketed, their personal lives were completely imploding. And this sets the stage for 1977 and the recording of Rumours.
People always call the Rumours sessions a pressure cooker, but even that feels like an understatement. It was absolute emotional devastation happening to everyone in the group all at the same time.
Let's break it down. First, John and Christine McVie.
Their 8-year marriage ended. They reportedly would not speak to each other at all in the studio unless it was directly about the music. Just a cold, professional silence.
And then you have Lindsey and Stevie.
Their long-term relationship also ended, but theirs was much more volatile. Screaming matches during the recording sessions were common.
So that's two couples breaking up.
And to make it even more complicated, Mick Fleetwood was in the middle of divorcing his wife, Jenny, and he began a secret affair with Stevie Nicks during the making of the album.
So you have a band where literally everyone is breaking up with everyone or sleeping with everyone else, and they're all in the same room trying to make a record.
And not just make a record, they were writing songs about it. That is the bizarre alchemy of Rumours. It goes on to sell over 40 million copies, one of the best-selling albums of all time. But the mechanics of it,
Yeah.
the songs were direct messages to each other.
Like Go Your Own Way.
Go Your Own Way is Lindsey Buckingham writing a really brutal message directly to Stevie.
Yeah.
And in response, Stevie Nicks writes Dreams, which is a message right back to Lindsey, telling him that he's going to miss her when she's gone.
The emotional fortitude required to do that is just art. It's hard to comprehend. Imagine having to go into the studio and sing beautiful 3-part harmonies on a song where your ex is detailing exactly why your relationship failed.
And not just sing harmonies on it, but help arrange it. Lindsey Buckingham produced Dreams. He took Stevie's very simple demo, and he built that gorgeous, shimmering arrangement around it, even though every single lyric was aimed directly at him. That tension, that's what you're hearing on the record.
So after the phenomenal success of Rumours, the logical business move would have been to just make Rumours Part 2. Do it all again.
Right, replicate the formula. But they didn't do that.
Why not?
That was largely driven by Lindsey Buckingham. He was terrified of becoming a parody, of getting stuck in that one sound. He pushed them in a much more experimental, almost punk-influenced direction. And the result was the 1979 double album, Tusk.
Tusk is a wild album.
It's completely wild. It's lo-fi in some places, frantic in others. The title track famously features the entire USC Trojan Marching Band. It was a very bizarre choice for a multi-platinum rock band at the time.
And how was it received? I know it's critically acclaimed now, but back then.
Commercially, it was seen as a huge disappointment compared to Rumours. I mean, it's still sold millions of copies, but not tens of millions. The record label panicked.
Right.
Interestingly, Mick Fleetwood later blamed part of the sales drop on radio. He said that radio chains played the entire double album on the air, in sequence, which allowed people to just tape it at home instead of buying it. This was the dawn of the home taping is killing music argument.
After Tusk, the band seemed to fracture for a bit.
They took a hiatus. And during that time, members pursued solo careers. Stevie Nicks, in particular, had enormous success with her debut album, Belladonna. For a while there, her solo records were outselling Fleetwood Mac's.
But they did get back together.
They did for the album Mirage in 1982, which was a very conscious attempt to get back to that radio-friendly Rumours sound. But you can hear that the cracks were really starting to widen.
Okay, let's move forward to 1987. The album is Tango in the Night. This really feels like the end of that classic era.
It was. The recording process itself took 18 months and was apparently incredibly difficult. Mick Fleetwood was dealing with bankruptcy and addiction problems. Stevie Nicks was largely absent because of her own dependency issues and a heavy solo touring schedule.
So it fell to Lindsey to pull it all together.
Almost single-handedly. He basically stitched the album together in his home studio. And the tension between him and the rest of the band, especially with Stevie Nicks, had just reached a breaking point.
And this all came to a head with a physical confrontation.
That's what the accounts say, yes. In August of 1987, there was a meeting at Christine McVie's house that reportedly turned into a physical altercation between Lindsey and Stevie. And right after that incident, Lindsey Buckingham quit the band.
Just as they were about to go on tour to support their biggest album in years.
Exactly. It must have been a complete scramble. Your musical architect just walked out the door.
So what did they do?
They hired 2 guitarists to replace him, a guy named Billy Burnett and Rick Vito. And they went on tour but the chemistry was just different. That magic that came from the friction between Lindsey and Stevie, it was gone.
And this leads into the 1990s, which, according to the source material, was a real slump for the band.
It was the absolute low point, both commercially and critically. In 1995, they released an album called Time. Lindsey was gone. Stevie Nicks was gone. It failed to even chart in the United States.
Just think about that, from being the biggest band in the world to not even making the chart.
It's an incredible fall. And then Christine McVie announced she was leaving, too. It really seemed like the band was finally officially over.
But then, in a very strange twist, politics gets involved.
Specifically, a politician named Bill Clinton. For his 1992 presidential campaign, he adopted the Rumours track Don't Stop as his theme song.
Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. It was a perfect message for him.
It was perfect. And when he won the election, he personally requested that the classic lineup Fleetwood, both McVie's, Buckingham, and Nicks, reunite to perform at his inaugural ball in 1993.
And they actually did it.
They put all their differences aside for that one night. And seeing them on stage together again, it just reignited this huge public interest. It reminded everyone what that specific combination of 5 people was capable of.
And it sowed the seeds for a full reunion.
It did. In 1997, they officially reunited for the dance. It wasn't a new studio album, it was a live concert album recorded on a soundstage, and it debuted at #1 on the charts. It proved that despite the 90s slump, the public was still desperate for that classic lineup.
But the reunion didn't last for everyone.
No. For Christine McVie, he was short-lived. In 1998, after the success of the dance and their induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, she retired.
Why?
She developed a really severe phobia of flying, and she was tired of the touring life.
Yeah.
She left the band, sold her house in California, and moved back to the English countryside to live a quiet life. She stayed out of the public eye for 16 years.
So from 98 all the way to 2014, Fleetwood Mac existed as a 4-piece. Lindsey and Stevie front and center, but that crucial third voice, Christine's voice, was missing.
Right. They released an album as a quartet, Say You Will, in 2003, which is a much more aggressive record without Christine's softer influence.
Right.
And they continued to tour successfully because the catalog is just so strong. And then there was this massive cultural moment for them in 2011 thanks to a TV show.
You're talking about Glee?
Yeah, the show Glee. They dedicated an entire episode to the Rumours album. And it pushed that 34-year-old album right back onto the Billboard charts. It introduced the music to this whole new generation of teenagers who had no idea about the backstory.
It proved how timeless the songwriting was.
Completely.
Then, in 2014, something happened that I think no fan ever thought was possible. Christine McVie came back.
It was an incredibly joyous moment for the fan base. She rejoined for the On With the Show tour. It really felt like the circle was finally complete. The Classic Five were back together. They were selling out stadiums around the world. It seemed like this was it. They were going to ride off into the sunset together.
But as we know with this band, peace is always temporary. Which brings us to 2018. This was a huge story that grabbed headlines everywhere. Lindsey Buckingham, the musical architect of the band, was fired.
This is a major, major dispute that shocked a lot of people. The sources indicate that the conflict was over touring schedules and set lists. Buckingham wanted to introduce some newer, lesser-known material, and he wanted flexibility for his solo work.
But the specific grievances that led to the firing were incredibly personal.
They were. It all revolved around a Music Cares event, where the band was being honored. Stevie Nicks was reportedly furious with Lindsey's behavior that night.
What exactly did he do?
She claimed that he smirked behind her back while she was giving a speech. And she also complained that he had an outburst about the intro music they used for their appearance. He wanted to play live, but they used the studio recording of Rhiannon.
So a smirk and a dispute over intro music led to the firing of a core member after more than 40 years.
It was the final straw. It was the culmination of a 40-year conflict. Stevie Nicks gave the rest of the band an ultimatum. She said, either he goes or I go.
And given that Stevie Nicks was the primary ticket seller,
the band chose Nicks. Lindsey Buckingham was fired. He sued them for breach of fiduciary duty, a lawsuit that was settled out of court later, but the bridge was just completely burned.
Who on earth could replace Lindsey Buckingham?
Well, just like in 1987, they hired 2 people. They brought in Mike Campbell, the legendary guitarist from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and Neil Finn, the frontman of Crowded House. And they toured with that lineup through 2018 and 2019.
While his lineup drama was playing out, the band also started to suffer some permanent losses. The reality of time started to catch up with them.
It did. The older original members began to pass away. Danny Kirwan, the third guitarist from that early era, he died in 2018. And then the founder himself, Peter Green, passed away in July of 2020.
The men who built the foundation were gone.
And 2020 was also the year of that incredibly strange viral moment on TikTok.
The cranberry juice video.
Right. A man named Nathan Apodaca posts a video of himself longboarding, drinking ocean spray cranberry juice, and just vibing to dreams. It went viral all over the world.
And it pushed the song back into the top 10?
Back into the top 10, and Rumours back onto the album charts. It was this perfect example of how the band's music just transcends generations.
But the final tragic blow to the band's existence came in 2022.
On November 30th, 2022, Christine McVie died at the age of 79 after a short illness. And she was. She was so often described as the mother of the band, the peacemaker, the glue between Lindsey and Stevie, and the writer of some of their biggest, most joyful hits like Don't Stop.
And what has the reaction been from the surviving members since her passing?
It's been pretty definitive.
Yeah.
Mick Fleetwood, the one person who always tried to keep the band going no matter what, he stated in early 2023 that he thought the band was done.
And Stevie Nicks.
She was even more direct in interviews in 2024. She said flat out, without Christine, there is no chance of putting Fleetwood Mac back together. She said Christine was the heart of the band, and without her, that entity just doesn't exist anymore.
I did see that Mick Fleetwood mentioned something recently about healing the rift between Lindsey and Stevie.
He did. In late 2024, he said he was open to helping them find peace with each other. But he was very clear to clarify that this was for personal healing as people, not about reforming the band to perform again.
So, as we sit here today, January 19th, 2026, what is the final status of Fleetwood Mac?
Functionally, they're inactive, and they're considered finished by the key surviving members. The death of Christine McVie really was the event that closed the book on the band as a touring and recording act.
It's just an incredible journey, from those blues clubs in London to the biggest stadiums in the world. When you look back at the whole legacy, what's the one thing that really stands out to you?
It's the pattern of converting personal heartbreak directly into timeless art. That soap opera label is often used in a dismissive way, but for Fleetwood Mac, it was just their reality. They didn't hide their pain. They broadcast it. They let us listen in on their divorces and their fights.
And the fact that a band could sell 120 million records while changing its entire front line multiple times, that's just unique. Most bands can't survive losing their lead singer once. They did it over and over again.
It's incredibly rare. They evolved from a dedicated blues band to a pop juggernaut, and they survived tragedies that would have ended almost any other group in history.
Before we sign off, is there one final provocative thought you can leave us with about this story?
There is one connection that I think is just vital. We talked earlier about the fake Fleetwood Mac incident in 1973.
Yeah.
How it was a disaster that nearly destroyed their reputation.
Right.
But if you connect the dots, that crisis and the lawsuit that followed, that's what forced the band to move to America and manage themselves. If they hadn't moved to America, they wouldn't have been scouting studios in Los Angeles in 1974. They never would have heard that Frozen Love track. They never would have met Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks.
Wow.
So in a very strange, roundabout way, that imposter band and the crisis it created, it was directly responsible for the creation of Rumours and the Fleetwood Mac that the world knows and loves today.
A fascinating ripple effect. A disaster that created a masterpiece.
It really was.
Thanks for listening.